The hug lasts 5 seconds. To Kang Soo-hyun, watching with a glass of whiskey he hasn't touched, it lasts approximately 5 years too long. Park Seon-jae, silk suits, easy smiles, the one rival who has never once had the decency to look afraid, has both arms around her. Around Zara. His wife, in a red dress Soo-hyun has never seen before, cut low at the back and moving like water when she walked into this room 20 minutes ago, and he had stood very still on this mezzanine and told himself, "Don't." He doesn't move. He watches. Seon-jae says something into her ear. Zara laughs, head back completely unguarded, the version of herself that used to fill their apartment with noise in that first year before Soo-hyun burned everything down and rebuilt the walls higher. She laughs like she has no idea anyone is watching, like she is perfectly, dangerously free. The whiskey glass finds a railing. Soo-hyun is already moving. He doesn't run. Men like him don't run, but the crowd parts for him anyway. Something in his posture, his silence, the particular quality of a man who has made decisions that cannot be unmade, and he reaches the bottom of the stairs in 30 seconds. He materializes at her side so suddenly that she startles. He feels the small flinch move through her before she controls it, feels it in the 2 inches of air between them, and some cold, reasonable part of him registers that it's been long enough that he can still surprise her, that she no longer tracks his movements the way she used to, back when she knew the sound of his walk from 3 rooms away. His hand goes to her waist, firm, unmistakable, not a question. His eyes go to Seon-jae and stay there with the particular blankness that his men know better than to argue with. Seon-jae, Soo-hyun. Seon-jae smiles the way he always smiles, like he's been given a gift. "I didn't realize you were coming tonight. Zara didn't mention it." Zara doesn't need to announce my movements. Beside him, Zara has gone very still. Not the stillness of someone cowed. He learned the difference between those two things in the first 6 months of their marriage. This is the stillness of someone assembling ammunition. Seon-jae glances between them with the bright, serene expression of a man who understands exactly what he's looking at and finds it deeply entertaining. He excuses himself graciously, something about finding the host, a warm press of Zara's hand before he goes. Before he goes, like this is his party, like she is someone he has the right to touch, and then he's gone, dissolving into the crowd, and he's winning simply by the way he left them standing here. The moment he's gone, Zara steps out of Soo-hyun's grip. It's a smooth movement, unhurried, the way she does everything, with a precision that makes it clear she's been thinking about it since the second he put his hand on her. She turns to face him and she is smiling with her teeth. "Touch me like that again without asking," she says very pleasantly, "and I will cause a scene so spectacular they'll be discussing it in 3 languages before midnight. You're my wife." The smile doesn't move. Something behind her eyes does. "Funny. You forgot that for 2 years. She turns back to the party. He stands there. He has, in the course of his life, ended negotiations that seasoned men walked away from shaken. He has sat across tables from people who wanted him dead and found the words to make them reconsider. He is not a man who runs out of things to say. He watches her walk away in that red dress, spine straight, chin level, the architecture of a woman who has decided she owes him absolutely nothing, and he has no comeback. Not one. The absence of it sits in his chest like a coal. He finds a corner of the room where he can see her without being obvious about it, which is its own kind of defeat. Across the ballroom, Zara accepts a new glass of champagne. From a server, says something that makes the woman next to her laugh, and does not look back at him once. He had been so certain he was right. The divorce papers are in his office, signed on his side, waiting for hers. He had told himself it was the last decent thing he could do for her. Release her from a marriage she hadn't chosen, from a life built around danger she'd never asked for, back to the bright and ordinary world she was meant for. He had told himself she would be relieved. He had not accounted for the red dress. He picks up his whiskey from where a server has discreetly ferried it across the room to him. He watches his wife work the room like she owns it. He thinks, the papers can wait. The car pulls away from the gala, and silence fills it like water filling a room, fast and then completely. His driver, Min-jun, has worked for Soo-hyun for 9 years. He raises the partition without being asked. 1 minute of silence. 2, 3. Zara watches Seoul move. Past the window, the city bright and indifferent, and focuses very deliberately on the lights, on the rhythm of street lamps, on anything other than the man sitting 18 inches away from her, motionless, who's apparently decided that his hand on her waist was a perfectly reasonable thing to do. 4 minutes. How do you know? Soo-hyun starts. Don't start, Zara says at the same moment. They both stop. A beat. She turns to look at him. He's already looking at her, controlled, carefully arranged, the face he wears when he's working something dangerous through in his head. How do you know Seon-jae? It comes out flat, not quite a question. We met at a charity dinner 6 months ago. He's been perfectly decent. She looks back out the window. Which, before you say anything, is not a high bar. My neighbor's dog has been perfectly decent to me. He's not decent. He's calculated. So are you. She turns to face him directly, and she can feel the precision of it, the deliberateness, the way she has learned over 3 years to make her stillness into something that costs him. At least he asks how I'm doing. She watches it land. A flicker behind his eyes, there and gone, shuddered before it can become anything he'd have to account for. I know how you're doing. Name one thing. She keeps her voice even. One thing about my life right now that you actually know. 1 beat, 2. You've been sleeping badly. His voice is very quiet. He's looking straight ahead, jaw set, like the words left him against his will. You leave the lamp on in the sitting room until past midnight. Zara stares at him. He doesn't move, doesn't look at her. A muscle ticks in his jaw, and he looks for one unguarded moment like a man who has just made a tactical error he cannot correct. You notice that, she says. I notice everything. A pause. I'm just not good at saying it. The anger in the car is still there. She can feel it in her own chest, low and banked, the kind that doesn't extinguish cleanly. But something in its quality has changed. It shifts the way a season shifts. No single moment you can point to, just the sudden awareness that the air is different than it was. That, Zara says after a long moment, is the most honest thing you've said to me in 2 years. He doesn't answer. She doesn't expect him to. They ride the rest of the way in silence, but it is a different silence than before, not the cold, armored kind they have perfected over 24 months of careful avoidance, but something thinner, more dangerous. The kind of quiet that happens when 2 people are both pretending they aren't listening to each other breathe. When the car stops, he gets out first. He comes around and opens her door. He hasn't done that since their first year, since before the war inside his organization, before the weeks he disappeared without explanation, before he came back and began the slow, methodical work of becoming a stranger in his own home. She remembers when it stopped. She had stood outside a restaurant in the rain waiting an extra 15 seconds before she understood he wasn't coming and opened the door herself, and she had decided, quietly, to never wait again. She steps out, and they are close. Just for a moment, one suspended second in the cool night air outside their building, close enough that she can feel the warmth coming off him, can smell his jacket, cedar and something faintly burnt, the particular scent of him that she has tried with significant effort and moderate success to stop noticing. Then the moment breaks, the way those moments always do. They walk inside. They take the elevator in silence. They part in the hallway, her room, his room, the geography of this marriage mapped in careful distance, and Zara closes her door and stands with her back against it in the dark for a long moment before she moves. Something has changed in the air between them. She knows it. She suspects he knows it too. She's not sure, yet, if that frightens her. She finds the divorce papers on a Tuesday. She isn't looking for anything. She goes into his study to leave a letter that arrived for him, formal, cream-colored, from someone overseas, and she sets it on his desk, and her eyes catch the edge of a document, and she reads the heading, and then she reads it again more slowly to be certain she hasn't misunderstood. Application for dissolution of marriage. She stands there for a moment with no particular expression on her face. Then she picks it up and reads every page, all the careful legal language, the provisions, the proposed terms. His signature is already there at the bottom, clean and definitive, the same signature she has seen on documents that ended careers, sealed territories, closed chapters permanently. There's a line for hers. She folds the papers precisely back into their original creases and puts them back exactly where she found them. She walks to her bathroom. She turns the shower to cold and she steps in without undressing first, which is not something she has ever done before, and stands there while the cold strips everything out of her until what's left is clean and empty and manageable. When she stops shaking, not from cold or not entirely, She peels off the wet clothes and turns the water off and stands in the quiet of the bathroom and makes herself look at the facts. He was going to let her go without telling her. He was going to hand her a document and call it kindness. Somewhere during 2 years of silence, she had started believing, quietly, carefully, in the part of herself she didn't examine too closely, that the distance wasn't indifference, that the lamp in the sitting room had been seen, that there was a version of this marriage that could still become something. She files that belief away neatly, closes the drawer. By the time Soo-hyun comes home that evening, she is at the dining table, dressed well, composed in every line. She has made dinner or overseen it, the kind of meal they used to eat in their first year when they were still negotiating the terms of sharing a space, and food was one of the few uncomplicated truces. She pours the wine, and she asks about his day with an expression of pleasant interest, and she listens to his answer and responds appropriately. She is warm, she is gracious, she is perfectly, completely unreachable. Soo-hyun sits across from her and eats and watches her the way he watches things he doesn't yet understand, with a stillness that looks like patience but is actually calculation, and she can feel him trying to find the seam, looking for whatever shifted. He won't find it. She learned, across 3 years of living alongside a man who made a profession of reading rooms, how to give him nothing to read. "Are you all right?" he asks, somewhere between the main course and the end of dinner. "Perfect," she says, and smiles at him. His eyes track the smile the way they tracked Seon-jae at the gala, with that focused, evaluative quiet. She holds it steady and looks back at him and thinks, "You signed the papers. This is what you wanted. I'm simply making it easier." He doesn't say anything else. After dinner, she excuses herself at a reasonable hour, says goodnight with the same pleasant warmth, and closes her bedroom door behind her and sits on the edge of the bed in the dark and does not think about anything in particular. Across the apartment, she hears him move through the rooms. She hears him stop more than once in ways that don't correspond to any particular task, just pausing. The way someone does when something is wrong and they can't name it. He stays up until 4 a.m. She knows because she doesn't sleep either, lying perfectly still in the dark, listening to the silence of a marriage that has already been signed away on one side and is simply waiting for the other hand to finish the job. She does not cry. She decided that in the cold shower. But she leaves her lamp off for the first time in months, and she wonders if he'll notice the difference. He comes home at midnight to find her in the hallway, dressed, keys in hand, coat already on. Soo-hyun stops in the doorway. For a moment, neither of them speaks. He takes in the details the way he always does, assembling the information before he addresses it. The dress, the heels, the fact that she is clearly leaving, not arriving. The fact that it is midnight and she's been unreachable for 3 days, and now she is standing in his hallway, looking like she has somewhere better to be. "Where are you going?" "Out." "It's midnight." "I'm aware of the time." She doesn't look at him. She's checking something in her bag with the focused attention of a woman who has decided this conversation is a formality. "Zara." His voice drops, not louder, lower, the register that functions in his opera world as its own kind of warning system. "Where are you going?" She turns around then, slowly, and she looks at him with an expression he has not seen before, or not like this, not this open, not this deliberate, like she has been storing it for 3 days and has decided, finally, to let it out of its container. "Seon-jae's team is hosting a dinner. He invited me. I said yes." The hallway changes. Something in the air pulls tight. "You're not going. Watch me. He is using you to get to me. Good." The word comes out like something breaking. Not tears. She is nowhere near tears. But fire. The kind that has been running clean and hot since Tuesday morning when she stood in his study holding papers that already had his signature on them. "Good, Soo-hyun. At least someone is using me for something. Because you married me and then forgot I existed. For 2 years I have lived in this apartment like a portrait on the wall. Decorative, occasionally useful at events, otherwise completely invisible. And now I put on a dress and suddenly you have opinions about my whereabouts?" He steps toward her. She doesn't move back. She has never moved back from him, not once in 3 years. It was one of the first things he learned about her, standing at an altar while she looked at him with murder in her eyes. She has always taken up her full amount of space. "You filed for divorce." Her voice drops, and the dropping of it is worse than the volume was. Quiet and precise and aimed. "I saw the papers, so you don't get to do this. You don't get to decide you want a wife the same week you decided to get rid of one. Silence. It lasts long enough that she can hear the building, the hum of the elevator somewhere below them, the distant texture of the city outside. Long enough that she watches something move through his face that he can't quite suppress, some rearrangement behind his eyes. He looks at her, actually looks the way he looked, at her across the gala mezzanine, the way he used to look at her in their first year when they were arguing about everything and she could feel him paying attention. He looks at her hands, at the keys she is gripping hard enough to whiten her knuckles. He looks at her eyes and the anger in them, and the hurt underneath the anger that she is working with visible effort to keep covered. I filed them because I thought that's what you wanted. The laugh that comes out of her is short and not a laugh at all. You never asked me what I wanted. I'm asking now. Silence, long, charged, the kind that has weight. Now, she says, is very late, Soo-hyun. She doesn't go to the dinner, but she doesn't stay for him. She won't give him that, won't let him read it as concession or victory or any shape of thing he can hold on to. She goes up instead to the rooftop where there is cold air and the wide, dark grid of Seoul and no one's breathing to be conscious of but her own. She stands up there for a long time. Below her, she knows. She doesn't know how she knows, just that she does, the way you know things about people you've shared air with for 3 years. He's still in the hallway. She imagines him standing exactly where she left him, looking at the elevator doors, and she wraps her arms around herself against the cold and refuses to feel anything sympathetic about it. She mostly succeeds. The next day, Zara goes to visit her best friend, Nia. Nia opens the door the next afternoon, takes one look at Zara's face, and walks directly to the kitchen for wine. She doesn't ask any questions. This is why Zara has been coming here for 4 years. Nia Asante understands that some things need to breathe before they need words. They sit on the couch. The wine opens. The afternoon softens. Zara does not say his name. She talks around the edges, the papers, the gala, the hallway, the terrible specific thing about being noticed without being reached for. And Nia listens and refills the glass and says, at one point, I know I'm not supposed to defend him, but that thing about the lamp. And Zara says, don't. And Nia says, I know. And they move on. 2 hours in, a knock at the door. Nia goes, because Zara is sitting with her feet tucked under her and her third glass and an expression that suggests she is done with effort for the day. Nia opens the door. She's quiet for a moment that is slightly too long. Then she says carefully, Zara, without turning around. Zara looks up. Your husband is here. A pause. He's holding jollof rice. Zara unfolds herself from the couch. She walks to the hallway. She stops. Kang Soo-hyun is standing in the corridor of a regular apartment building in Mapo-gu in a suit that costs more than Nia's monthly rent, holding a takeaway container from Accra Kitchen, the Ghanaian restaurant near their apartment that Zara mentioned exactly once in passing 8 months ago in the middle of an unrelated conversation. She had said, there's a place near us. They do jollof that tastes close to how my mother made it, and then the conversation had moved on and she had never mentioned it again. Because it was a small thing, a nothing thing, the kind of detail that disappears. He remembered it. She looks at the container. She looks at him. He looks back at her with an expression that is entirely unreadable except for something very quiet in the corners of it, something she might call uncertain, except that she has never once seen him uncertain. How did you find me? You come to Nia's when you're upset. He says it plainly, no performance in it. You've done it 4 times. You came the week after your father's first anniversary, after the Jeju trip, after the New Year's event when I left early. A small pause. I pay attention. I just don't always know what to do with what I notice. Behind her, Zara hears Nia make a very small sound that she is trying very hard to suppress. You can't just show up with rice and expect... I'm not expecting anything. He holds the container out. The gesture is simple, a little awkward on him, which is something she has never seen before. Soo-hyun, awkward, standing in a normal hallway being a normal person who drove across the city because she didn't eat breakfast. You didn't eat this morning. You never eat when you're upset. You think you're not hungry, but then you are, later, and there's nothing. The corridor is very quiet. She's aware of everything at once, the container warm in the space between them, the specific quality of his stillness, which is different from his controlled boardroom stillness and different from his Cold War of their marriage stillness. This is the stillness of someone waiting, not demanding, not maneuvering, just waiting to see what she'll do. She takes the container. The exhale he releases is barely audible. She hears it anyway. It sounds like something that has been held for a very long time. Behind her, Nia mouths something she doesn't turn around to read. She stands in the doorway looking at her husband, who memorized the restaurant she mentioned once and remembered how she is when she's hurting, and crossed the city at 3 p.m. in his good suit, for no reason he has stated and no outcome he has named. Who noticed the lamp? Who noticed the 4 times she came here and catalogued each one? Who has apparently been paying attention for 3 years while doing an extraordinary job of making her feel like he wasn't? She doesn't forgive him. Not yet, not simply, not because of Rice. He starts coming home earlier. No announcement, no explanation. He simply begins appearing at 7 instead of midnight, at 6:30 sometimes, once at 5:50 when she was still in the middle of cooking, and she turned to find him in the kitchen doorway in his work clothes, jacket over one arm, watching her. "You're early," she said. "Yes," he said, and went to change, and that was the entire conversation. This is how it goes. He comes home. He doesn't crowd her. He seems to understand with that precise attentiveness that she is slowly recalibrating her understanding of exactly how much space she needs. He sits in the living room and reads or works while she does whatever she was doing, and the apartment fills with the quiet sounds of 2 people occupying the same space without performing anything for each other. It is, she thinks, the most honest they have ever been. On Thursday, he comes home to find her in the kitchen, standing on her toes with one hand braced on the counter, reaching for the top shelf where the good olive oil has been sitting since she put it there 3 weeks ago and has since become a recurring problem. She is not quite short enough for this to be impossible, but the shelf is genuinely unreasonable, positioned by someone who had either very long arms or very poor judgment. She doesn't hear him come in. His arm reaches past her, unhurried. He lifts the olive oil down in one easy motion and sets it on the counter beside her hand, and she startles and turns, and he is right there, not quite stepped back, still close enough that she has to tilt her chin up to look at him. The kitchen is small. There's not very much space to account for. Neither of them moves. She's aware of several things at once: the warmth coming off him, the same warmth she noticed outside the building that night, the fact that he is looking at her face with an expression she doesn't have a name for yet, something complicated and careful and less armored than usual, and the fact that his eyes drop for exactly 1 second to her mouth. Then, back up. Her heart is doing something that she would describe to Nia later, privately, as deeply unhelpful. She keeps all of it off her face through sheer force of will that she feels she does not receive adequate credit for. "Thank you," she says, very steady. He doesn't move. "You're in my space. You're in my kitchen." It's a shared kitchen. Then we share the space. He steps back finally, but slowly, the kind of slowly that is its own kind of statement, and the expression on his face when he does is the most unguarded she has seen him since he appeared at Nia's door holding Rice. Warm and uncertain and complicated in a way he's not trying to hide. He looks at the stove. "Dinner smells good." "I made enough for one," she says. A pause. "I'll order something." She turns back to the counter, picks up the olive oil, sets it down. "I may have accidentally made enough for 2. She doesn't look at him when she says it. She hears him, very quietly, not quite laugh, something that falls just short of it, a breath with warmth in it, and the effect it has on her chest is completely unfair, and she intends to think about it later when he can't see her face. "Accidentally," he says. "It's hard to judge quantities." Don't read into it." "I'm not," he says, and she can hear that he absolutely is. They eat dinner together for the first time in 18 months. The table they have eaten at formally, when required, for events. But not like this. Not just the 2 of them, with no occasion to perform for, no distance maintained as a point of principle. She made jollof, her own recipe, not her mother's exactly, but close enough to matter, and he eats it with the focused attention he gives things he's decided to take seriously. They talk about nothing in particular. Her work, a project she's been consulting on, a problem in his organization he describes in terms vague enough to be about anything, a documentary she watched last week. Whether the shelf placement in this kitchen was intentional or a design failure. They do not talk about the papers. They do not talk about the hallway or the gala or Nia's apartment. They do not name anything. But she laughs once at something he says, a dry observation delivered completely deadpan, And he looks at her the way he used to look at her in their first year when she'd caught him off guard, like she's something he didn't fully account for, and she thinks, there you are. When the plates are cleared, she goes to the living room, and he follows, and they sit, not close, a careful foot of space between them, and the evening does its quiet evening things around them. He falls asleep on the couch somewhere around 10. She discovers this when she looks up from her book and finds him sitting with his head tilted back, the particular stillness of actual sleep rather than his usual controlled repose. He looks like this, like a different version of himself, the one that exists under the architecture. She looks at him for longer than she means to. Then she gets up, takes the throw from the armchair, and puts it over him without touching him, and goes to bed. She leaves the lamp on. The rooftop party is the kind of event that exists mainly to remind souls elite of their own reflection. Glass everywhere, catered things on small plates, the particular conversational cadence of people who have nothing to prove and spend the evening proving it anyway. Zara is in the middle of a circle. Seon-jae, two of his associates, a woman she knows vaguely from a charity board, when it happens. Seon-jae has been charming all evening. He is always charming. It is the thing she liked about him in the beginning, before she started noticing that his charm has a direction to it, that every easy smile is angled toward something. He says it lightly, the way he says everything, framed as warmth, as a compliment almost. Zara, honestly, how long are you going to play the devoted wife? Everyone can see you're too brilliant for that arrangement. The circle goes quiet in the way that circles go quiet when something has been said that everyone will pretend. In a moment, they didn't hear. Zara opens her mouth. She's not playing anything. Soo-hyun's voice. Behind her close, she didn't hear him cross the roof. Every head in the circle turns. He steps forward until he's standing beside her. Not in front, beside, level, deliberate, the positioning of someone who has thought about what it means. My wife doesn't perform devotion. His eyes rest on Seon-jae with a particular quality of patience that is not patient at all. She simply has more class than to air private matters publicly, unlike some people in this circle. Seon-jae smiles his bright, untroubled smile. Protective all of a sudden. I've always been protective. A pause. I'm working on being present too. He says it to Seon-jae, but he turns slightly as he says it, toward her. A degree, maybe two. And she is the only one positioned to see his face when he does, the only one who catches what's in it. She keeps her expression neutral. She watches Seon-jae read the room, find it no longer favorable, and pivot gracefully to something else. The circle redissolves into noise. Someone refills a glass. Later they find themselves at the edge of the rooftop, the city unfolded below them. She can feel the drink in her hand getting warm, forgotten. You didn't have to do that, she says. I know. Why did you? He is quiet for a moment, not avoiding the question. She can tell the difference now, just finding the true answer rather than the available one. Because he was about to make you feel small, he says. And I've spent 2 years doing exactly that without saying a single word. He looks out at the city. I'm not going to stand there and watch someone else do it out loud. She looks at him for a long time. He's facing forward, the lights of soul catching the edge of his jaw, his profile the same controlled, unreadable thing it always is, except that she knows now what to look for underneath it. She's been learning the vocabulary of him slowly, the way you learn a language through immersion, through accumulated context, through the gradual understanding that the silences mean things. She leans her head against his shoulder. Just barely. Just enough. He goes completely still. Not the stillness of someone who doesn't want it. The stillness of someone who is afraid, with a precision she understands now as characteristic of him, of doing the wrong thing with something that matters. He stops like a man who has been handed something he thought was gone and doesn't trust himself not to drop it. He doesn't move for the rest of the night. Neither does she. She hears him before she sees him, the quiet sounds of someone trying not to make any, the particular quality of stillness that means another person is awake in a sleeping apartment. She finds him in the kitchen. He's standing at the window with a glass of water, looking at the city the way he always does at this hour, like the skyline is a problem he's close to solving. He doesn't turn. When she comes in, but his shoulders shift slightly. He knows it's her. He always knows. She crosses the kitchen and sits on the counter beside the window. Their old thing, from year one, before everything. She used to sit here while he made coffee and they'd argue about whatever they were arguing about that week. and it was the first place in the apartment that felt like it belonged to both of them. He looks at her when she does it. Something quiet moves through his face. "Couldn't sleep," she says. "No." She pulls her sleeves down over her hands. The apartment is cool at this hour, the city outside doing its 3 a.m. version of itself. Still lit, still moving, but slower, like it's thinking. She looks at him, looking at it. "Tell me why you really pulled away." He doesn't answer immediately. She waits. She has learned to wait for him, not infinitely, not anymore, but enough to let him find the thing that's true rather than the thing that's available. "I had a man. Killed," he says, quietly. No particular inflection on it, which is somehow worse than if there were. "Someone who'd been with me for 9 years. He turned on the organization. 3 people died because of information he passed. I made the call." The city moves outside the window. "I came home that night and you were asleep." He looks at his glass. "You had the lamp on. You were just asleep, with your book on the pillow. And you looked so entirely untouched by any of it, so completely separate from what I'd just done." He turns the glass slowly in his hand. "And I understood, standing there, that the closer you were to me, the more of my world would eventually reach you. That it was only a matter of time before something I did left a mark on something that was yours." He sets the glass on the windowsill. "So I moved you away from it. I told myself it was the only responsible thing." She lets it sit for a moment. "That wasn't your choice to make. I know that now. I'm not fragile, Soo-hyun. I know, I don't think you do." She says it without heat, just precision. "You decided I needed protection from the truth of who you are. You decided I couldn't hold it. You made that judgment, and then you executed it without consulting me and called it care." She tilts her head slightly. "My father ran an organization that made enemies across 4 countries. I've been watching powerful men manage dangerous things my entire life. I knew who you were when I walked into that church. You were 25, you didn't have a real choice." "No," she says, "but I'm 28 now, and I'm still here." She holds his gaze. "Doesn't that tell you something?" He looks at her. Not the careful, evaluative look. The real one, the one she's been slowly learning to recognize, the one that exists underneath all his architecture when he's not maintaining it. "It tells me you're stubborn," he says. "It tells you," she says quietly, "that I stayed." The weight of it lands between them. All 3 years of it, the wedding she didn't choose, the first year of friction and warmth, the night he came home from something terrible and made a unilateral decision that shaped everything after. The 2 years of silence, the red dress, the papers, the rice, the shoulder on the rooftop. All of it, accumulated, sitting in the kitchen at 3 a.m. between 2 people who have been living around the edges of something they haven't yet said out loud. He pushes off the window and crosses the kitchen slowly. He stops in front of her. She's on the counter, so they are almost level, eye to eye nearly, the closest they have been to equal footing since the altar. "If I asked you to tear up the divorce papers, you already tore them up," she says. "I checked the bin 3 days ago." Something crosses his face. Then, for the first time in 2 years, sudden and genuine and surprised entirely out of him. He laughs, not a polite thing, not the controlled. Almost smile she's been cataloging. A real laugh, brief and unguarded, and it changes his whole face, and she thinks, there he is. There is the man I accidentally married. She reaches out and fixes his collar. A small thing. It's slightly turned under on one side, has been since he came downstairs, and she's been noticing it for the past 10 minutes. Her fingers straighten it and smooth it flat. He catches her hand, holds it there against his chest. She can feel his heartbeat under her palm, steady and fast at once, and she doesn't move, and he doesn't move, and the city goes on doing its quiet nighttime things outside the window. "I should have asked you," he says. Not an apology exactly, something more considered. About all of it, what you wanted, whether you were afraid, whether you wanted to leave, whether... He stops. "I should have treated you like someone whose answer mattered." "Yes," she says, "you should have." "I'm telling you things," he says. "Actual things. That's me telling you a thing." She looks at him. The 3 a.m. version of him. No jacket, collar she just fixed, the city behind him, 2 years of damage and 3 months of slowly finding their way back to the same room at the same hour, his hand around hers against his chest. "I know," she says. Neither of them says anything else. They don't need to. The kitchen holds them in its quiet, and outside, Seoul continues its indifferent glittering. And somewhere in the apartment, the lamp in the sitting room is still on, burning for no one now, a habit that outlasted the reason for it. The tea is wrong. She knows before she takes it from him. She can tell by the color, too dark, the same problem every single time across 3 years of evidence. He makes it like he approaches most things, with full commitment to the wrong method. She takes the mug, takes a sip, sets it down and reaches past him for the pot of hot water without saying anything. "I know," he says. "I didn't say anything. You made the face. I don't make a face. You make a specific face," he says, "that you've been making since approximately month 2 of this marriage. It means you're being patient about something you find unnecessary." She fixes the tea. Their hands brush over the same mug, passing it back. The kitchen is warm, Sunday light coming through the window at its particular unhurried Sunday angle, and there's nowhere either of them needs to be. She sips the corrected tea. He watches her. She has been learning to read that expression. It has taken time, because he deploys it rarely and always briefly, like he's not certain he's allowed it. But she knows it now. She knows what it means when his eyes settle on her with that specific, undefended quality. "You are the only thing in this city that makes sense to me," she lets herself know it. "So what are we doing?" she asks. "We're having tea. Soo-hyun. We're starting over." He says it simply, the way he says things when he's decided. Properly, from the beginning, if that's what you want. She considers him over the rim of the mug. This man who is impossible and aggravating and was absent for 2 years and showed up to her friend's apartment in a suit holding rice and tore up his own divorce papers and laughed at 3 a.m. like something she'd been waiting to see again. This man who notices everything and has been slowly, stubbornly learning to say it. "You're going to have to learn to make tea," she says. "I'll learn. And you have to tell me things. Actual things, not just the lamp. Real things when they're happening, not after the fact. I'll tell you things. And when you make decisions that involve my life, you ask me first. Every time. Non-negotiable. Yes. And Zara." "What?" "Yes," he says. "To all of it. Every condition. Yes." She looks at him for a moment longer. One last beat of the distance she has been maintaining carefully as a matter of survival. She sets down the mug. Then she closes the distance herself, steps into him, her hands finding the front of his shirt, and tilts her face up and kisses him for the first time in 2 years like it is something she is choosing. Fully, with her eyes open, with all 3 years of them behind it. His arms come around her, and he holds on with the particular care of a man who has been given back something he understood too late. And outside the kitchen window, Seoul does its bright, ordinary Sunday thing, entirely indifferent to the fact that something inside this apartment has finally, after everything, come home.